Yes. Yay. We got it.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, lovely to meet you, Stella. How are you doing?
Yeah, same. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, it's my birthday today, so I'm very happy.
No way. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm having a really nice day. Yeah.
Wow, what an exciting start in the day. Yeah?
It is rather, yes.
I'm Kathryn Buxton, and since discovering the joy of meditation in my late 30s, I've been on a journey of self-discovery that has introduced me to some fascinating ideas. Join me as I take a deeper dive into the areas of our well-being that we just don't give enough attention to. Would our lives really be any better if we took our well-being seriously? Each week I'll be joined by a well-being specialist to unpick the value of sleep, nutrition, kindness and so much more. This is Things You Should Care About podcast in association with Isbourne.org.
And today I'm talking to the very lovely Stella Mehler, who is 26 years old and was born and raised in Cologne, Germany. She struggled with depression and anxiety, which led to psychotherapy and eventually to the book, The Journey from Abandonment to Healing by Susan Anderson. This looks at the role of our inner child when faced with challenges and difficult emotions. Stella has fully embraced the ideas in the book and has worked in healing and sorting out her own inner child, and now runs workshops and helps others to do the same. She and her lovely dog currently live in a rural village in southwest Algarve. So a very warm welcome to you, Stella. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah.
I guess it's a sunny day in Algarve, is it today?
Yeah, hello, Kathryn. Thank you so much for having me today. Yeah, it's quite sunny and lovely. I already had a dip in the ocean before recording this podcast, so perfect setup.
I'm very jealous. So what was it about moving to Portugal that you found so appealing, Stella? Why is it you wanted to move here from Germany?
I think the main cause for it was nature. I grew up in a big city, it's always been lots of traffic, big city lights, a lot of shops, and yeah, here it's all a little bit more wild and free. There's more simplicity in life to it. I think the next shop, if I need to buy anything like big, I need to drive for an hour. So life here is less focused on consumption, and it's more about just living and being.
That sounds wonderful, Stella. It sounds really lovely.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
But it's a very big thing to do at a young age, to sort of go and live somewhere completely different, a completely different country. It must have taken lots of courage.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe looking from the outside perspective, you could think so. But for me, it felt like the most natural thing to do, because I never really felt like I fit in where I grew up anyway, in like this kind of city life. And so I discovered this place here when I was in holidays for the first time. And then I always kept coming back to it whenever possible. And the last time I just stayed, and it was never really that I made the decision, wow, I'm going to move to Portugal now. It just kind of happened naturally, step by step. And
it's just evolved naturally.
Exactly.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. So how did you come across this work with the inner child, Stella?
I came across the inner child work basically through my own mental health journey. Yeah, as you said in the introduction, I struggled with depression and anxiety, and I attended a psychosomatic clinic for some time, and there they introduced me to the concept of the inner child. And I already thought back then it was quite, it really resonated with me, being in the role of the patient. And then I kind of did my own healing work, moved to Portugal, I kind of forgot a bit about it again. And then actually, because of a personal crisis, going through a breakup with my ex-boyfriend, I found this book and The Journey from Abandonment to Healing, and there the inner child got mentioned again. So yeah, I did all the practices described in there, and basically really got obsessed with inner child work and looked up many different sources, and just kind of like a sponge soaked in all the information I could find about it. And then really found out that for me it was like the key, or like a big part, a big tool of coming to a better place mental health wise, and creating more self-worth and independence and self-love. So that's why in the end I decided to put myself out there and share what I've learned, because I believe so many of us, we all look like adults, but we all have these little inner children inside of us. And lots of times when there's conflict or drama, it's because the inner children inside of us are speaking to each other, and it's not the adults speaking to each other and acting, but the inner children being in conflict. And I believe we all need a bit of inner child work to bring a good balance.
I agree, absolutely. I think that's really fascinating. And it's my birthday today, as I told you, and even over the last couple of days, my little inner child was saying, but nobody knows it's your birthday, nobody cares, you won't get any presents, you won't get any cards, having a real little tantrum, and I just have to sit her down and just give her a big cuddle and say, do you know what, it'll be fine, it'll be absolutely all right. So
perfect. You're being a good mother to yourself there, huh?
Exactly. I'm trying, absolutely. What is the inner child, and how does the inner child sort of show up in our lives, Stella? How does it manifest itself?
Yeah, I believe there are like slightly different definitions to it, but I describe it like this, that the inner child basically is a metaphor for our feelings. And so whenever you're feeling anxious or scared or concerned, worried that nobody might remember it's your birthday and give you presents, it's the inner child inside of you feeling anxious or worried or scared. So it helps to really visualize the inner child as a maybe like 3 years old version of ourselves, and then to think, okay, what does a 3 years old child need? Of course, it needs a lot of love and intention, and like to feel seen and heard and cared for. And the idea is that our inner child is basically our feelings that speak to us. And by creating this image of the inner child, we create basically a container that is separate, that is outside from us, and we describe all the feelings that we're feeling to this container. Like this, we have a safe space where all of the feelings we feel are welcome, like even the challenging ones, the ones we usually maybe don't want to feel because they are not so nice to feel.
It's sticky, yeah.
Exactly. And by creating this metaphor, this image of the inner child, and by seeing our feelings as something outside of us, or by basically giving them a voice, letting the inner child speak our feelings, it gets a lot easier for us to actually access them and to notice them, and then to deal with them in a non-judgmental and compassionate and kind way. Because how do you speak to a 3 years old child? Of course, loving and nice. And it's often the case, I think, that when we speak to ourselves, we are overly critical and harsh, and we speak to ourselves in an internal voice, how we would never speak to our best friends, or of course not a little child. And the whole idea behind this is to change this internal voice and make it a more kind and compassionate one, so we can actually learn to be that good friend or mother to ourselves.
And I think another word that comes to mind is patience as well. I mean, I've had 2 little children, and I've had them when they were 3 years old, and I remember that. And I remember how patient you had to be. So I guess it's about being patient with ourselves too. Yeah,
true, right? I noticed that on myself actually as well. As soon as I understand something mentally, I immediately think, okay, now the next day I need to change it, or there should be a change visible already. Whereas usually, as everything in life, it's a process. It takes time, it takes repetition. Same with children, right? They learn by picking up and dropping things like 100 times. And patience, I think, is a big one.
Yes, absolutely. I still struggle with that now myself. Yes, it is a difficult, that one, very difficult. So you talk about when we had a chat beforehand, this sort of big you and little you, and the way that you can have a dialogue between each other. How does that work?
Yeah, so there are many different approaches to do inner child work. I think meditations are also a big one. I usually, before doing this big you, little you dialogue, which basically is a dialogue between the inner child and the adult self in a written form on paper. Before that, usually I do a little visualization. So you really visualize yourself as a 3-year-old to meet your inner child, and then you visualize yourself as the most capable, responsible version, adult version of yourself. And then you let these two parts of you meet on paper. So it looks like this, that usually it's the big you, the adult self, opening the dialogue by saying, for instance, like, hey, inner child, or maybe you like to give your inner child a name, like little Kathryn, or I call mine little Stella. So I'm like the big one saying like, hey, little Stella, how you're feeling. And the whole idea, the adult self wants to encourage the inner child to express how he or she is really feeling, to express its emotions, to hold space, and to acknowledge and validate the emotions.
So you just write down the dialogue, basically.
Yeah, it sounds a bit weird, or you might think, okay, what should I write about? But it's really fascinating technique, because every time I pick up the pencil and I have no idea what's gonna come out. Like I have an idea maybe what the adult self is gonna say, or because I want to find out basically how I'm feeling myself. So I'm gonna ask the little child how she's feeling or what she needs and how I can support her best. But yeah, the inner children, they really, especially when you do this exercise regularly, they really become a personality or a character by themselves, and they sometimes tell you things or emotions or stuff you care about you didn't even know there was going on in your mind.
I suppose you're not blocking, you're kind of just letting the whole thing flow through. You're not kind of like censoring yourself or censoring what you'll write. You're just allowing that inner child to really say what she needs to say.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point in it. Basically, you can stop and think, like that's the only thing maybe to pay a bit attention to, that you're still kind of staying on top of the game as the observer, that you still have the roles clearly defined, that it's really the child expressing its feeling and the adult adulting and taking care of the child and giving like words of affirmation and reassurance, or like making promises to help the child feel more safe or seen. So that's one thing. Sometimes where it's good to make a little break. Maybe if you notice, oh, now it's the inner adult saying, oh, I'm so scared. No, that should be the words of the inner child, because the inner child expresses the feelings. But yeah, the whole idea is to not censor it. There is no right or wrong. It's basically just a journaling method to get more in touch with what's going on inside of you. And instead of just writing everything in like the first person or singular, like I feel today like this, to make it in the form of this dialogue and let the inner child basically talk to you and tell you how she or he is feeling.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. How often do you do it? I mean, is it something you do every day or at various times?
Yeah, Susan Anderson recommends it, especially in the beginning, to do it daily. Maybe if you have a routine, to make it part of it in the mornings or in the evenings, just to create this bond and connection to your inner child. Because actually, for many of us, especially if we're not really in touch with our feelings, that means we're not really in touch with our inner children. It can be that our children feel quite abandoned and have trust issues towards ourselves. So it really, like in a real relationship with a child or people around us, it really takes some time and patience and effort to create this relationship and actually to get the inner children to a place where they want to communicate with us and trust us and want to open up. So yeah, in the beginning, it's recommended to do it daily and then maybe at least 3 times a week. For me, it always works best in this written form, but if you're a bit more practiced, you can also just do it mentally in your head, especially in situations like of crisis. I don't know, you are somewhere and suddenly you're feeling anxious or not well, and then you remember, this is my inner child, basically like pulling the strings or knocking on the door saying like, hello, I need some attention. So maybe you can go inwards or step away from the place you are for a bit and tell yourself like, hey, it's okay, what do you need? And yeah, so like this, it can really become, the idea is that it's a tool, an ongoing practice for your life, that you can always take with you, and basically like a little key to access your inner world, your inner feelings.
Yeah, and I suppose for a lot of us, maybe when we're mothering or being a good mother to our inner child, for a lot of us don't have a good role model for what good mothering is. I mean, I definitely didn't have a particularly good role model for what being a good mother is. It took me, I think, to be a mother and to practice being a mother, sometimes not always successfully, to work out what it is to be a good mother. Yeah. So how do you find it? How can we find the good mother, the good adult? Is it about trusting ourselves, trusting the adult?
I think trust plays a big role in it for sure. And I guess you are even more experienced in being a good mother, obviously, because you're a real mom than I am. So I guess I still have some more work to do with my inner adult to actually practice to be a good mom to myself. But I think the idea is we know ourselves best. Like, we are conscious of who we are. And if we have a little bit of awareness and start noticing our needs and wants, in the end, it's ourselves who we have to meet our own needs. And we are responsible for taking care of our emotional well-being, for navigating through our inner landscape. Like, especially in a situation like this with COVID, I know there can be feelings of, I don't know, like a feeling of that we lose control of what's happening around us, and that can have a big effect of what's going on inside of us. And I think the first attempt we always try to do is to control our surroundings, or to control the people around us, their reaction, their words. We want this person to behave more friendly, that person to behave more whatever way. And inner child work is really about like learning to let go, like, okay, we cannot control what's happening around us, but we can really bring back and take on full responsibility for what's happening inside of us, and for basically self-soothing and meeting our own needs without the constant look for external validation or safety. I think that's why, for me, for instance, the inner child work really came up at the end of a relationship, because there I noticed, I have basically myself as an inner mom, inner mother, as the inner adult. I have stepped back and I have given my inner child to my partner and let him be the adult taking care. So that was the process of, okay, no matter who I'm with in a friendship, in a relationship, or even now my actual mother is visiting here in Portugal, even when I'm with her, she cannot always meet my needs. She cannot always see what I need and give me the right words. And it hurts. That's the inner child then saying like, oh, I don't feel seen, I'm hurt. Like, why doesn't she notice I'm tired, or she didn't ask how my day was? And then it is up to me, my adult me, to step in and give myself these words and say like, hey, I really care about you. To me, you're the most important person in my life. How are you feeling? What do you need? How was your day? And that makes us a lot more independent from what's going on outside of us, I think. And it makes it easier to stop taking things so personally.
I really like that, Stella, because it is difficult, it's really hard, especially in our Western civilization, to not seek things outside of ourselves to complete ourselves, whether that's, the next latest iPhone, or whether it's the relationship, with a person, or, your sibling or your mother or whatever. We're always looking to that to make us feel whole. I guess what you're saying with this, and what I really like about it, is that we already have all those tools available to ourselves within ourselves. So it's about, accessing those things ourselves that are there already, and being responsible for ourselves. Yeah,
exactly. That's put very nicely. It's exactly what you said. I think especially in our Western capitalist world, we're so used to, or it's so easy. It is so easy. The whole system is designed to constantly distract ourselves from what's really going on inside of us. I don't know, maybe I feel a feeling of sadness when I come home alone and at the end of the day, and I don't want to feel these feelings, so I can immediately take out my phone and scroll social media for half an hour. Then I see a picture of this person doing that with another person, which evokes another feeling inside of me. Then I feel that I don't want to feel this feeling, so I don't know, go to the freezer and get a chocolate ice cream and eat it, and then I call my friend. Yeah, we have so many opportunities constantly around us to avoid this place of really stopping, to stop and enter basically this blank space where we just are with ourselves, and then also our inner children, to notice what's going on inside of us. And I think it's quite human also to some level, that it's nice that we have all these pleasures, but it's good to have a little bit of awareness. And then with the help of inner child work, which basically is this tool, maybe we can slowly shift to a place of, okay, next time I hold in for and stay with myself for like 5 seconds, just taking some deep breath. And even then, if I turn to my distraction, to my vice, to my numbings, I do it with more consciousness, I do it with more awareness. And then maybe the next time the break is even longer, I wait for half a minute, and then maybe it's a minute, and at some point I'm so aware that I don't really want to do it anymore. Or maybe I even manage to sit down and, I don't know, meditate, to hold myself, or to take out the pen and paper and be like, okay, I sit down and just for 5 minutes check in with myself, what's really going on. And if I still feel like, I don't know, eating the ice cream afterwards or doing whatever I do to distract myself, I can still do that. I think it's, inner child work can really help us to create more awareness, and to basically create this little pause in between. We feel something and then react immediately. And instead of feeling something, making this little pause and then responding from an adult, from our adult self. Because lots of times when we react, like for instance, you say something to me, I feel offended, and then, I don't know, I scream back at you immediately. I wouldn't do that. Extreme example, but and inner child work, so that would be my inner child screaming back at you. Like there would be no filter. It would just be the pure emotion going back at you. And inner child work, I think, can help us to learn to take in what's happening, maybe take one breath, make this little millisecond of break, and then respond more and more from an adult place. And that, I think, there will be a lot less drama or conflict in our world if we all would take on more our personal responsibility for our feelings and reactions and responses.
You spoke a little bit about this thing called reparenting. Can you just tell us a bit more about that? What's reparenting?
Yeah, reparenting basically is the term for providing for our inner children what they need, like to really act from the place of the inner adult and meeting our own emotional needs of our own children. Like, as I said before, these magic words like I see you, I hear you, I choose you, we know best what our childhood wounds are.
Yes.
I think we all have some kind of childhood wounds, not because our parents meant to do that, or just because they're human, and just because it's just naturally that we all carry these little traumas, or this little, maybe old belief system inside of us, like I'm not good enough, or I'm too much, I'm too sensitive. And by reparenting ourselves, we can actually change this inner voice, or we can tell our inner children the opposite, like, no, you're good enough, you're not too sensitive, you're allowed with all that you are, you're not too much, you're exactly right the way you are. So basically, by reparenting, we are holding a really, really kind and compassionate space for ourselves, for our inner children. And we learn to, I think, come back more to a place of wholeness, to really accept ourselves as we are, because we were born perfect, I believe, the way we are already. We've just been told, or we internalize these voices in our lifetime, maybe that we were not, or we're to this and to that. And reparenting is really coming back, I think, to our essence, and maybe also to our innocence of, hey, I am okay just the way I am, and also I can take up space. I'm allowed to take up space and speak my truth and be all that I am. And even if someone else maybe voices some criticism, me, the adult, is protecting and taking care of my inner child and reassuring it constantly that it's all perfect and right the way it is.
And have you found that in this work, Stella, that you've been able to forgive the negative voices that may have come from, say, your parents or from teachers, or, you know what I mean, that maybe they've done it unconsciously and not meant to, but that you're able to forgive that?
Totally, more and more. It's such a good practice at the moment, having my mom here. I can see how many times I actually get triggered, or my inner child gets triggered. But now I'm capable also to see when, I mean, we're all human, we all have inner children. I think when we're children, we see our parents just as the parents, or they should be perfect, they should see and know all what we need at each time, but they're just human too, with their own personal story, with their feelings and stuff they're caught up in. And now I can actually, having the knowledge about all this inner child work, I can actually see also the difference in my mother when it's her inner child talking or acting towards me, and when it's her adult. So yeah, I'm not being so judgmental or harsh on her anymore, and a lot more forgiving. Also because now I don't feel dependent on her validation or her words of affirmation, because I can do that for myself now, and in relationships as well. Yeah.
So I guess you have a much more adult relationship with your mother.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to come back and do another podcast with you after she's gone home, and then you can tell me how it was.
It might be interesting. We're going on holidays for one week, just the two of us. It's going to be a good challenge for the inner child work. But I actually also managed to guide her through some, or I gave the workshop to her, so I introduced her to some inner child work, and it's amazing the effects also it had on her, because she realized that sometimes it was even her looking for some validation or safety in me, like some reassurance, where I always felt like, this is too heavy, this is not my job as the daughter. So I guess we can all learn from each other, like intergenerational, which is really beautiful.
Yes, it is beautiful, absolutely perfect, really wonderful. So I was going to say to you, how has, I think you've answered part of the question, but how has it affected you? How has it shown up in your life? What's it done for you, this inner child work? Obviously, it's helped with your relationship with your mum. That's good.
Yeah, exactly. The inner child work definitely brought me to feeling more confident and independent. And yeah, I think I feel a lot more in integrity with myself now, because I know there's a good relationship now between my inner child and my inner adult, and that I'm actually listening and paying attention to what my inner child needs. I'm actually validating and acknowledging my feelings and acting according to them, and not self-sabotaging anymore. Like, for instance, when my inner child asked to go home, having a really nice evening with my friends out, and like I feel this feeling of or this little voice inside of me that's like, it's kind of enough, I want to go home, getting a bit tired. Then my head would always reason like, why it's such a nice evening, you can still stay. And then I would just overstay, and at the end of the day feel like super drained when I finally go home. And now, being so attuned to my inner child and so closely in touch, I just trust it more and I listen to it, and I go home already, even though it was a nice evening, and I don't end up super drained or exhausted and wake up the next feeling refreshed. And so, yeah, it really created this inner trust that I can trust my feelings and also my body more. And I feel a lot more independent, especially in relationships or also friendships, that I don't know, I was quite the overthinker, or still am before, always worrying like that I might have offended someone or someone might be upset or mad with me. And now I'm like, can reassure myself more that unless they tell me, it's not the case. I'm not taking things so personally anymore. And feeling a lot more self-love and assurance, basically.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's lovely to hear. But I was also interested there what you said about listening to your inner child when you're out with your friends and she wants to go home. So it's not just the fact that you soothe the inner child and say, no, everything's all right, darling, everything's okay. I'm big Kathryn and I can look after you, etc. It's about actually listening to what she says and sometimes acting on what she says.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we create this trust that maybe is damaged from our previous experiences or from not paying attention to our feelings before. And once we really start developing this relationship with our inner children, they can be quite demanding, like they really can get their own personality and actually say like, hey, but if you want me to trust you, it would be helping, or I want you to go home when I say it's enough. Otherwise, how can you always like give your energy and attention to anyone else and make sure everyone else is okay around you except for yourself? So it's really basically honoring really your inner child and taking it for serious and not, that's the thing. I know it sounds like just doing this exercise, writing this dialogue on paper, or like it sounds a bit abstract, this image of the inner child, but it's really, you're connecting with the real part of yourself, with your emotional core. So you got to honor that and you got to take that seriously. And if you make a promise to your inner child, like, yeah, I'm going to speak to you every day, which is quite a big promise, or I'm never going to leave you again or something, you better make sure that you keep it. Otherwise you break your trust with yourself again. And that really doesn't feel good when you lose trust with yourself and your inner child.
Yeah, I really like that, Stella, because often when I've thought about inner child work, I see it as just the older person soothing the younger person. Whereas what you're talking about here is that you're having a really wonderful relationship. The older you and the younger you, you're having a wonderful relationship where you're actually listening to each other, and not always the older person who might think, I want to stay out late tonight and have a good time, is right. Sometimes that you need to listen to this little child who's saying, we need to go home. We need to go home. And it's about trust, about trust that flows between the both of you.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite fascinating, actually, how wise our inner children are.
Yes.
They are so wise. Like lots of time writing this dialogue, I actually feel a bit of resistance starting it, because I know maybe if I didn't check in with my inner child for lots of days, or I've abandoned her. So I've abandoned myself a lot in the last week. I know she's going to tell me and she's going to be like on point with this and she's going to ask for what she needs. It's just really, I really feel like it's connecting to our inner children is like connecting to our center, our essence, our truest self. And you can actually somatically locate your inner child in your body as well. I think for each person, the inner child might sit somewhere else. For my friend, the inner child sits in the back. So every time she gets this kind of pain in a specific area in her back, she knows it's her inner child knocking on there and saying like, hey, something is not going right. For me, for instance, it's in the heart. I can really feel like I get physically pain in my heart when I'm not acting or speaking my truth, not being aligned with myself, so not honoring my inner child. It's amazing. We have again, in our Western world, I think our whole way, how we learn to live and how we learn in our educational system, it's all based on knowledge, just like in your head, brain-wise, mental-wise. But we have all this body wisdom as well. And I feel like inner child work and really connecting with your inner child also brings you more back in your body, and you can learn to trust more this little voice that you might call intuition or higher self, whatever you want to call it, to be in trust with yourself and what's happening around you.
Oh, it sounds wonderful, Stella. It sounds like it's a lifetime's work there. Yeah, it never stops.
I believe so. I'm just at the beginning as well. So, yeah.
And what was the name of the book that you read that really got you onto this?
The book is called The Journey from Abandonment to Healing by Susan Anderson. And this one is really about, the relationship of the inner adult and the inner child. And now I'm currently working on basically a second part of the workshop, because she introduces briefly in this first book a third character, which is called the outer child. Oh. Yeah. The outer child is basically our reactions. The outer child is the part of us that self-sabotage, that, I don't know, has the third glass of wine in the evening when we say we just want to have one glass of wine, and was always like trying to basically interrupt this relationship between the inner child and the inner adult, but by pretending to speak up for the inner child, to protect it, to be like, no, you can have this whole jar of ice cream, you deserve it, you had a really good day, when in reality, of course, it's not good to have the whole jar of ice cream. Maybe one scoop would have been enough. But so I'm slowly shifting my attention now a bit to this part of self-sabotaging, and what we talked about before, this place of not instantly reacting, but coming more to a place of pausing and then responding. And so that's all belongs to this third persona, the outer child, that Susan Anderson described, and which I've never heard about before in other theories of inner child work. So I thought it might be worth having a look into it.
So Stella, we asked this question to everybody that comes onto the podcast, and it is, what one piece of advice has someone given you that you would like to pass on to others? And it doesn't have to be about the inner child, it could be anything.
That's a good question. I was thinking a little bit about it beforehand already. And I think a piece of advice that I always hold on is, nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal can exist.
Nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal can exist. Oh, that's interesting. I like that.
Yeah, it's a piece of advice, or like one of the sentences one of my mentors, Anna Robertson, which I'm doing a coaching program with for 1 year, she always repeatedly says that, and it just stick to me, because I really believe that in life, the things that are meant for you and supposed to be there, or the people and persons and situations, they can't miss you. And anything else that is not based on truth and will break eventually, will fade away, will not last. And for me, this saying, nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal can exist, just gives me a big feeling of relief, of okay, it's all good and it's gonna be good. I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm not too late, I'm not too old for that, I'm not too young, I'm not,
Yes, you're not missing anything, because
I'm not missing.
You can't miss anything, can you? Because yes, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Yeah.
And it brings back this feeling of calmness and groundedness, and okay, I just do me, how it feels right and how I think it's supposed to be, and everything else will fall into place if I'm being like really in a good and honest and aligned place with myself. It's all gonna work out.
That's fantastic, Stella. Yeah, that's really lovely. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's really nice talking to you.